They say time slows down at the edge of trauma, but for Grace Harrison, it shattered completely. 1 second, she was just a quiet girl in history class. The next, she was pinned against a wall, a hand clamped tightly around her throat, her air vanishing like a stolen secret. Fingers dug into her skin with the arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. Zachary Reynolds, the star quarterback, the golden boy of Westfield High, wasn't just choking her. He was trying to erase her. But what no one in that moment realized, not Zachary, not the boy filming gleefully from the side, not even Grace herself, was that this wouldn't be the end of her silence. It would be the end of theirs. "Please," she whispered, her voice a rasp, as fragile as the promise she was about to break. "Don't make me do this." But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we witness the precise moment when Grace Harrison, all 90 pounds of her, broke a bully's wrist with military precision and changed her school forever, we have to go back. We have to understand what made a girl invisible, what kept her quiet for so long, and what finally snapped. 3 years earlier, Grace had mastered the art of survival, not through violence, but through stillness. She knew which hallways to avoid, which lunch tables to bypass, how to fold herself into the edges of rooms so tightly no one would remember she was there. To most students, she was just a shadow against the wall, barely worth a glance. But Grace had secrets, a history, a promise, and a ghost named Emma. Emma Rodriguez had been her light, vibrant, unafraid, bold in ways Grace had only read about in books. She wore rainbow pins on her backpack and defiance in her smile, and for that, the school chewed her up. Grace remembered the bruises, emotional then physical, the mock Instagram accounts, the hair-cutting incident, the helplessness, the funeral. She remembered standing over Emma's casket, her best friend cold and still, and making a second vow that day, one that would haunt her. Never again. I won't let them create another you. But promises like that come with a price, especially when your brother is a former amateur fighter who trained you before sunrise every morning. Especially when you've spent your entire adolescence learning to calculate angles, measure exits, control breath under pressure. Especially when you've made a sacred oath to only use your training if you have absolutely no other option. So how did Grace Harrison end up with Zachary Reynolds' broken wrist dangling limp in front of half the school, captured in glorious high definition? That story doesn't start in room 207. It starts with a history class, a question about military strategy, a girl who finally dared to speak, and a predator who made the mistake of underestimating the wrong quiet girl. If you've ever felt small, invisible, overlooked, if you've ever been silenced or pushed to the brink, this story is for you. Because what happened next wasn't just self-defense, it was justice. And it was only the beginning. Tuesday, November 12th. The minute hand on the clock ticked toward 2:47 p.m. as Mr. Bennett droned on about military strategy. His voice, a dull, monotonous hum, merged with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. To most students, it was just another dull lecture. But for Grace Harrison, it was another exercise in invisibility. She sat exactly where she always did, third row from the back, closest to the wall, a spot chosen with precision. From there, she was far enough from the front to avoid the spotlight, yet close enough to the wall to minimize exposure. She had a clear line to both exits. No one noticed her. That was the plan. That was always the plan. Mr. Bennett turned to the class and asked, "Can anyone explain the Boyd loop?" A pause. Then, predictably, Zachary Reynolds' hand shot up. The quarterback with the flawless grin and even more flawless GPA, thanks to private tutors and a father on the school board. Logan Peterson, ever his loyal cameraman, immediately angled his phone to record. "It's about military observation, like watching your enemy and stuff," Zachary offered with smug assurance. A few chuckles echoed in the room. Grace's fingers tightened around her pen. Wrong, painfully wrong. Mr. Bennett sighed. "Anyone else?" And then she did something she rarely did. She raised her hand. It felt like lifting 1,000 pounds. The room turned. 28 pairs of eyes blinked in unison, most registering her presence for the first time all semester. "Miss Harrison?" Mr. Bennett blinked. Grace cleared her throat. The OODA loop stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. It was developed by military strategist John Boyd. It's not just about watching. It's about interpreting what you see faster than your opponent. about disrupting their decision cycle so they're always reacting to you. Silence. Then something unexpected. Applause, a few claps, then more. Not mockery, real recognition. Mr. Bennett even smiled. But across the room, Zachary Reynolds was seething. Logan's phone now pointed at Zachary, capturing the subtle purpling of his face. His jaw clenched, teeth grinding. Hunter Jackson looked down, clearly uncomfortable. The bell rang. Students flooded toward the door. Grace packed slowly, praying the trio would leave first. No such luck. "Hey, Einstein," Zachary sneered, voice cutting through the noise like a rusty blade. "Nice showing off." Grace didn't respond, didn't look up. She hoped silence would make her invisible again. "I'm talking to you." His shadow loomed over her, all 6'2" of ego-fueled fury towering above her 5'3" frame. "You think you're smart? Think you're better than me?" "I don't think anything," she said quietly. "I just answered a question." Logan circled to her other side. Phone raised again. "Yo, this is perfect. Nerd versus stalk. King. This'll blow up." "After detention," Zachary whispered, leaning in so close she could smell his protein shake breath. "Room 207. Time someone taught you your place." Then they left. Grace stood frozen, hands trembling around her backpack straps. Room 207, the old chemistry lab. No cameras, security barely patrolled that hallway. She knew. She had mapped every blind spot in the school years ago. Basic survival. But what they didn't know was this. Grace Harrison had been preparing for this moment for 8 long years. Flashback. 8-year-old Grace, barefoot on blue gym mats, facing her brother Daniel. His left hand trembled from nerve damage, but his movements were precise, controlled. "Why do I have to learn this?" She'd whined, drenched in sweat. Daniel's eyes darkened. "Because the world's full of predators, and I won't always be there to protect you." Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, boxing, pressure points, meditation, every morning before school. While other kids played video games, Grace learned how to survive. "It's not about fighting," Daniel had said. "It's about being prepared, having options, having control." Then came the promise. "Promise me, Grace, only use this if you have absolutely no choice. If you can walk away, walk. If you can run, run. Fight only when cornered. Use only the force needed to escape." I promise. She hadn't known what it would cost. Now, back in present day, she walked toward detention, every footstep echoing with memory. She passed lockers, posters, fragments of a high school life she had never fully lived. The classroom air was thick and stale. Mrs. Peterson graded papers, oblivious to the storm brewing. Grace sat by the window, scanned the room, measured escape routes. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Tick-tock. Mouse. She deleted it and thought of Emma. Always Emma. The friend who had shined too brightly in a place that punished difference. The girl who had begged her to break the rules. Who had cried in this very room, tired of being strong. 2 weeks later, Emma was gone. Pills and vodka. A 4-word note, "I'm tired of fighting." Grace stared at the clock. 3:44 p.m. Her hands stopped shaking. Her breathing evened out. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. Just like Daniel taught. At 3:45, the bell rang. Detention was over. But for Grace Harrison, the real test had just begun. She packed slowly. One final chance to walk away. But then she remembered her vow. I won't let them create another Emma. And with that, she turned toward the hallway that smelled like dust and broken dreams. Toward room 207. Toward destiny. Room 207 waited like an open mouth. The old chemistry lab stood silent, just slightly ajar, like it knew what was about to happen. Grace's footsteps echoed on the linoleum, steady and deliberate. The overhead light flickered once. She paused at the door, inhaling deep through her nose. She could still walk away. She could report the threat. She could stay invisible. But then she thought of Emma, of what happened when silence won. No, not again. She stepped in. The air inside was still, like the calm before a storm. Zachary was already there, perched on the teacher's desk, feigning nonchalance. But Grace saw through him, the tension in his posture, the grip he had on the edge of the table, his eyes flicking nervously. Logan stood to his right, holding up his phone, camera already rolling. Hunter Jackson stood by the far wall, blocking the room's only other exit, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Well, look who showed," Zachary grinned. His tone was laced with venom. "Thought you'd run home to mommy." "I don't run," Grace said simply, placing her backpack by the door. Her voice was calm, unshaken. It made Logan pause just slightly. "No, you just hide," Logan smirked. Little mouse in the walls, always scurrying away. You think you're so smart, huh? Time someone reminded you where you belong. And where is that? Grace asked, shifting her stance ever so slightly, feet apart, weight centered. Under our boots, Zachary replied, cracking his knuckles as if to punctuate his bravado. There's a natural order to things. We're the apex predators. You're prey. And when prey gets too bold, it needs to be put back in its place. Grace tilted her head, studying him like a specimen. Interesting philosophy, she said. But tell me, what exactly makes you a predator? Zachary blinked. Logan snorted. Hunter's jaw tightened. Because we're stronger, Zachary said. Are you? Grace stepped forward. Her tone shifted, clinical, dissecting. Strength isn't just about size. It's about leverage, about knowing your opponent, about control. You favor your left knee, Zachary. Old injury, never healed properly. You're unstable on it. Zachary's face twitched. Logan, your obsession with that phone has left your left side completely exposed. You're watching through a screen instead of watching your surroundings. Logan frowned and shifted. And Hunter? Grace looked at him with something bordering on compassion. You don't even want to be here. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Logan lowered his phone slightly. Zachary stepped off the desk, jaw clenched. How do you know all this? Logan asked. I observe, Grace said evenly. I orient myself, I decide, and then, she met each of their eyes, I act. Zachary snarled and rushed her. He moved like he did on the football field, charging forward with sheer brute strength. He slammed her back against the wall, his hands gripping her shoulders. The wind was knocked out of her, but Grace didn't resist. Not yet. You think you're smart? He hissed. You think some military quote makes you tough? Please, Grace gasped. You don't have to do this. We can walk away. Walk away? Logan laughed. We're just getting started. Do it, Zach. Show her what happens to nerds who forget their place. Zachary's right hand released her shoulder and drew back, preparing to strike. Grace's mind calculated the possibilities. She could duck, let him hit the wall. She could sidestep, trip him. She could exploit the knee. But still, she waited. One last moment. One last choice. And then his hand shifted to her throat. You're actually choking her, Hunter said, his voice low. Good, Zachary snarled. Let's hear you beg, Mouse. The air was vanishing. Grace's vision began to tunnel. Her lungs screamed. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Daniel's voice whispered, only when you have no other choice. Please, Grace whispered again. Her hands came up, fingers brushing Zachary's wrist, not to strike, but to give him one last chance. He didn't take it. His grip tightened, a pop echoed inside her neck. Time fractured. Grace's brain went quiet. 8 years of training surged forward. Observe. Grip too high, thumb misplaced, poor leverage. Orient, right side vulnerable. Balance compromised. Decide, disable grip, break structure, minimize force. Act. Her left hand clamped on the soft spot between his forearm bones. Her right hand drove up into his elbow, twisting as she pivoted. The pop this time was external. Loud. Wet. Zachary screamed. He staggered back, clutching his wrist, now bent at an unnatural angle. His face contorted in disbelief and pain. Grace didn't gloat. She simply dropped into a defensive stance, breath measured, bruises already blooming across her throat. You broke my wrist, he howled. Yes, Grace said softly. I warned you. Logan stood frozen, mouth open, phone limp in his hand. Hunter stared. Something like shame clouded his eyes. Then a voice cut through the thick silence. Holy shit! All heads turned. Olivia Chen stood in the doorway, phone held high. I got everything, she said. The choke, the warnings, the break, everything. No, delete that, Logan yelled, lunging forward. Grace reacted instantly, one smooth motion, a sweep to his leg. Logan went down hard, crashing into a desk, groaning. I think we're done here, Grace said, eyes never leaving them. Zachary needs medical attention. You can tell the truth or let the video tell it for you. She turned to Olivia. Let's go. Grace grabbed her backpack, walked calmly to the door, paused. You wanted to teach me about natural order, she said over her shoulder. That lesson learned. Predators only hold power when prey chooses not to fight back. I'm done choosing silence. She stepped out. Olivia followed. Behind them, pain, panic, and a fractured hierarchy. Ahead, justice, and the storm that would follow. The hallway outside room 207 buzzed with possibility. Grace and Olivia moved through it like calm in the eye of a brewing storm. Behind them, 3 broken boys, one physically, all emotionally. In Olivia's hand, the phone that had captured it all. The chokehold, the warning, the wrist-breaking moment of reckoning. Grace's throat ached, bruises forming where Zachary's rage had once pressed down, but her spine was straight. She had survived. Now it was time to speak. "I'm going live," Olivia said suddenly, her fingers already moving across her screen. Olivia, wait. But it was too late. The live stream blinked to life. Olivia's voice came through shakily at first, but with growing strength. "Breaking. Something just happened at Westfield High. You all knew Emma Rodriguez. You know what happened to her. Well, I just watched them try to do the same thing to Grace Harrison." She turned the camera to Grace, to her bruised neck, to her calm, composed face. And this time, someone fought back. Within seconds, the stream's viewership climbed 50, 200, 500. Comments poured in. "OMG, is this real? Call the police. Grace is a legend." In the distance, voices echoed from room 207. Logan's anger, Hunter's panicked urgency. "We need to get you to the hospital, your wrist." "Shut up! Get that phone. We need to delete." Logan burst into the hallway, saw Olivia's phone, saw the viewer count now cresting 700. "Turn it off," he demanded, lunging with his good arm. Grace stepped between them, calm and clear. "Touch her or her phone, and I'll break your other ribs. That's not a threat. That's a medical prediction." Logan froze. Behind him, Hunter dragged Zachary into the hall. The quarterback's face was pale, his arm dangling. "You'll pay for this," Zachary spat through clenched teeth. "My dad's a lawyer. We'll destroy you." Grace didn't flinch. "I'm the girl who broke your wrist," she said evenly. "And if you come after me again, a broken wrist will be the least of your problems. You've got 15 minutes before the swelling cuts off blood flow. Go." The logic cut deeper than any insult. Hunter didn't wait. He nearly carried Zachary toward the nurse's office. Logan limped after them, his swagger replaced by silence. Behind them, Olivia's live stream surged past 1,000 viewers. "Grace," she said, still filming. Tell them everything." Grace hesitated, then turned toward the camera. "My name is Grace Harrison. I'm a senior at Westfield High. For 3 years, I've watched bullies terrorize students while the school did nothing. I stayed quiet, even when my best friend Emma begged me to speak up, even when the bullying drove her to end her life." Her voice cracked. She steadied herself. "I made 2 promises, one to my brother, to only use violence as a last resort, one to Emma, to never let them create another victim like her. Today, Zachary Reynolds tried to choke me unconscious while Logan Peterson filmed it and Hunter Jackson stood by. I defended myself. I'm not sorry." She looked into the lens, eyes fierce. "I'm done being sorry for surviving." The stream exploded. 2,000, 5,000. Olivia's phone vibrated with notifications. Someone had already screen recorded the fight. It was spreading like wildfire. Then the intercom crackled. "Grace Harrison and Olivia Chen to the principal's office. Immediately." They exchanged glances. Olivia kept streaming. The walk through the school felt surreal. Heads turned. Students emerged from classrooms, after-school clubs. Whispers followed them. "Is it true?" someone asked. "Did you really break Zachary's wrist?" "Only after he tried to choke me," Grace answered flatly. They entered the office to chaos. Principal Murray stood behind his desk, red-faced. The school resource officer rested a hand on his radio. 3 school board members had somehow appeared. In the corner, the school's lawyer whispered frantically on his phone. "Sit," Murray barked. "Olivia, turn off that phone immediately." "No," Olivia said simply. "People deserve to see how you handle this. That's illegal, streaming minors without consent. Not when documenting a crime," Grace interrupted. "Assault, battery, attempted strangulation, all felonies." "You broke his wrist," Murray snapped. "That's self-defense," Grace replied. "He was actively choking me. I have the bruises. She has the video. Want to see the part where I beg him to stop, or where he cuts off my air supply?" Silence. "Officer Martinez," Grace added, looking to the officer. "You've seen the video?" "Let's see it," he said. Olivia handed him the phone. The room watched in silence. Zachary's aggression, Grace's restraint, the break. When it ended, Martinez looked up. Grim. "That's clear self-defense. Textbook. Honestly, Miss Harrison showed remarkable restraint." "She broke his wrist," Murray protested. "She could have done worse. Choking someone is attempted murder. She used minimum force to stop a lethal attack." Grace's phone buzzed. "Daniel." She answered, put it on speaker. "Grace, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said. "Bruised, but I kept control. Minimum force. I'm proud of you, little warrior. I'm on my way with Mom and our lawyer. Don't sign anything. Don't say anything else until we're there. The call ended. The tension in the room thickened. Then the door burst open. Zachary's parents stormed in, his mother in hospital scrubs, his father in a crisp suit. That's her, his father bellowed. The animal who shattered my son's wrist, his football future, ruined. Grace stood. Is your son alive? She asked. What? Is he breathing? Of course. Emma Rodriguez isn't, Grace said. She's dead because this school protected bullies instead of victims. The room fell into stunned silence. I'm sorry your son is injured, but I'm not sorry I defended myself, and I'm not sorry he's finally facing consequences. The office door opened again. Daniel entered, followed by their mother and a woman in a sleek black suit. Nobody speaks to my client without me present, she said, flashing credentials. Janet Morrison, I represent Miss Harrison. Civil matter? Murray asked, voice trembling. Oh, it will be. We're suing the school for failure to protect, the boys for assault, and anyone who retaliates against Grace for lawful self-defense. Officer Martinez nodded. I'll be recommending charges against the boys. Zachary's father erupted again. Morrison didn't blink. Your son is lucky he's not facing attempted murder. I suggest you get a criminal defense attorney. Outside the office, students were chanting, phones out. Justice for Grace was trending. Murray slumped in his chair. She's suspended, pending investigation. No, she's not, Morrison said. Not with 100,000 people watching. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. Grace looked into Olivia's lens once more. To everyone suffering like Emma, like me, you don't have to be silent. You don't have to be invisible. Document everything. Report everything. And if they leave you no choice, defend yourself. Because now the silence was broken. And it would never return. A week later, the walls of Westfield High looked the same, but the air was different. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like suffocation. It felt like anticipation. Grace sat near the back of the auditorium as Principal Murray, now grayer and far more subdued, announced his resignation. The investigation had revealed years of negligence, bullying complaints ignored, victims silenced, and enablers protected. 3 board members had already stepped down. Policies were changing. Mandatory bullying reports, anonymous tip lines, clear consequences. But more than policies, something more powerful was happening. Culture was shifting. At the heart of it stood Grace. She was no longer invisible, no longer shrinking to the edges of classrooms, no longer walking the halls with her eyes down. Instead, she taught. Twice a week after school, she led a new self-defense class. It wasn't just about jujitsu or pressure points. It was about choice, control, survival. Fighting, she would tell them, is always the last resort. But when it comes to that moment, you fight to win. You fight to survive. You fight so others don't have to. The class had grown. 60 students attended regularly, with dozens on a wait list. Many were kids who had once felt like her, quiet, afraid, unremarkable. Now they stood taller, spoke louder, looked bullies in the eye. One face stood out among the students, Hunter Jackson. He had publicly apologized at a school-wide assembly, admitted his role, not just in what happened to Grace, but in what he'd ignored, what he'd allowed. I was a coward, he had said, but I don't want to be one anymore. He'd enrolled in Grace's class the next day. Emma's mother came to the first session. She watched silently, hands clasped, eyes wet. Afterward, she embraced Grace tightly. She would be so proud, she whispered. You gave her voice. Now, Grace sat in the auditorium again, called to the stage by the new principal. As she walked forward, students rose to their feet, applause cascading over her like a wave. This time, there was no trembling, no hesitation. Miss Harrison, the principal announced, will be leading our new Student Safety Council. She'll work directly with administration to ensure every student feels protected and heard. Grace stepped to the microphone. Her voice was strong, her back straight. 8 years ago, my brother taught me to fight so I wouldn't have to. 1 year ago, my best friend died because she felt powerless. 1 week ago, I broke a bully's wrist because he gave me no choice. Today, we break the cycle. She let the words hang. Emma Rodriguez should be here, but she's not because we failed her. We let silence win. We let fear rule. That ends now. Not with violence, but with vigilance. Not with revenge, but with justice. Not with silence, but with voices raised together saying, no more. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Later, as Grace and Daniel walked home together beneath a pink dust sky, he asked gently, "Did you do the right thing?" Grace looked ahead, then nodded slowly. "I survived. I protected myself when no one else would. And I gave voice to Emma." Daniel smiled. "Then yeah, little warrior, you did the right thing." Grace didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her story had already spoken for her. She had kept both promises. And there would be no more Emmas. But as Grace took her place on the Student Safety Council, a new transfer student entered Westfield High. Her phone buzzed with notifications, already being followed by someone with a username far too familiar, one with a wolf emoji. And the words, "Prey doesn't get second chances." What happens when the bullies don't come from the school, but from the internet? Grace's story isn't over. Subscribe and stay tuned for part 2.